Hello all, Alison here. Welcome back to Words and Pictures for some more tag time. I promised when we did some swatching the other week, I showed you these little swatch panels, that we might have a look at what I did to swatch these Coneflowers with multiple Oxide inks on them. And I decided that what I would actually do is maybe make some very simple stamped tags today, which could be used as bookmarks. They could be anything really. I've also happily discovered that this watercolour pad, which I use a lot, it's just kind of mid-priced watercolour paper, not the best quality, but a cotton cellulose mix. I've discovered that I think what it'll do is one sheet will make me 6 tags. Pretty darn close to being, yeah, 3 on each side. So I decided I'm going to cut that into 6 tags. I'm probably going to hand cut it. I do have a tag shaped die, but to be honest, I don't mind if these are a little rough and ready. So I've made one fold down the middle. Let's take that. As always, the long Tim Holtz shears are a joyous gift for being able to cut without too many strokes. And then I'm just going to kind of go like this, I think. Rather than draw lines on it, I'm just going to take my tag and cut along the edge of it. And again, take my tag and cut along the edge of it. And if they don't end up all exactly the same width, I'm just going to live with it. And then the other thing to do is just snip off those top 2 corners. Of course, if you're not tag minded, just keep these as panels. That's also completely fine. If you want to make bookmarks, you could make them half the width if you really want to make skinny bookmarks. But I think for the moment, because these flower heads are quite substantial and this lavender foliage from the slightly older set is quite substantial, I've decided to stick to the tag format that I know and love. But there's absolutely no reason you have to make these tags. You can absolutely make them as card panels, as direct stamping to a pre-folded card, as postcard sized, as ATC sized, artist trading card, which is 2.5 by 3.5 inches. I'm trying to hold these tags still as I cut. As you can see, it sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. And then I get a little wonky edge, but as I say, I'm untroubled by that. I may or may not cut holes in the tops of these. To be honest, I probably will end up cutting holes in the tops of these. But for now, I'll go with leaving it. And the joy of having the tag die is that if I want to, I can cut myself some rings to go on the tops of these. So I'm planning to keep these pretty simple. I might go for some masking. I do have the possibility to use the masks because I've got those pre-cut and ready to go. I've got a couple of poppy masks done on tracing paper. If you haven't seen the video where we use those, I will aim to link it below somewhere here. There are also a couple of Coneflower masks of those, so they're ready to go. I've also got that poppy mask. Good. Okay, well, so we might well do that. But basically what we're up to here is sort of a version of the watercolour stamping, which we have done before. Just applying multiple coloured inks to the stamp, and then away you go. And since that's the one I started with there, let's start with it here as well. I think I'm going to go quite boldly Coneflower, maybe, for once. I've done these as delicate daisies, I've done them in neutral colours. I think it might be time to go for a full-on sort of, first of all, yellow Coneflower, but with that rusty centre. And then maybe we'll go for something pink and rust, because they do come as that as well. So as you can see at the moment, this is Distress Inks. We can absolutely use oxides for this as well. And if you've seen the new mini oxides, they'll be really lovely to use for this, because you can apply, obviously with a small ink pad, you can apply even more precisely. I'm now going to do my aiming for the stem of the flower through the middle here. Going to use the edge of this ink pad. If you've got watercolour markers, as we were using in a previous video, in fact, trying to think of the timing, that's probably the video you've just seen. You could absolutely use a watercolour marker to go down the middle there. But I sort of want a looseness. I don't mind if that's slightly missed. I'm going for something slightly more impressionistic, probably. I'm going to put this one down here facing that way. Just a lovely sort of multicoloured, not terribly watercolour stamping. Just keeping things simple to start with. I think I like that so much. I want another one. You saw me put on a little bit of Vintage Photo Oxide right into the middle of here, just to give that centre a bit more presence, which I really like. I've done okay with aiming at my stem, as you can see. I might zoom in a little bit so that you'll be able to see these stampings happening in more detail. Great, so let's, I think I want that same flower head. Okay, so this time I'm gonna maybe start with the peeled paint. I'll put a little bit more on afterwards. I'm gonna go again with that rusty hinge for the center. And this time I'm gonna aim my Vintage Photo around the base of that. So you can see how this is much easier when we're applying the watercolor markers. You can really see where you're headed. This is for a much looser, sort of softer game, I suppose. I am tempted to put a little bit of pink into here as well. I'm going to go picked raspberry, I think, and just bounce that into a couple of petals to start with. This time I'm going to give it a good spritz of water before I stamp, so that I'm creating a softness. And you can see I'm going to have to do a little bit of filling in of stems here. Oh, see, look at the lovely delicate watercolor look of that. I'm going to spritz a bit of water over here. So I've got a couple of droplets of water now heading onto this one. Before I go too much further, I'm going to find one of my watercolor markers so that I can complete stems here. Back in a sec. So I do know I've used this green a lot, so I'm hoping I've got enough ink in it to be able to, yeah, just get a sketchy little stem going down there. There we are. Nice. Not entirely in love with this pink here, but I guess it'll grow on me. What I might want to do is take a little bit of pink, even with a water brush perhaps, pop a bit of pink on here and just do a little bit of pink into the center here, so that those two flowers are now tied together. Quite like that. I don't really want to color the whole of these petals. I want to keep things quite loose and soft, but I think a little touch of color is quite a nice thing on there. And because I can, oops, that wasn't intelligent. Let's wipe that up. I want a little bit of the rusty hinge as well, and I'm going to add that to a couple of these, and also over that pink in there, down there. So I'm keeping this very soft and kind of, I guess, rather than a vintage look, what we're getting is a much more, I don't want to use the word modern, but I suppose, yeah, it does have that feel to it. This that I've got on the mat here, I am of course just going to join together and do a little bit of spatter across the whole of the tag. There we go, nice and simple. And maybe it's, yeah, that might be done. It's interesting, just kind of looking at it and thinking I quite like that. I'm going to pick up a couple more prominent splats. That's fun. Going to let that dry and then see what I think when I come back to it. Let's go more watercolory on the next one. I'm going to switch out the stamps. Let's go lavender. Let's have a little bit of lavender playtime. So next tag up, here's the lavender set, slightly older set. And I've got foliage and I've got stems. So I'm going to ink up the stems. Let's go for a bit of mixing ink and oxide. So I'm going to start with Faded Jeans ink just on the flower heads to start with. Going to put a little bit of chipped sapphire in there as well. Then I might use, what colour green? Oh, I know, maybe one of the new Find It greens might be nice. Let's take the spring green, and I'm just going to bring that all the way up the stems, like so, and let it slightly flood into the flower there, because the greenery of a lavender stem does go all the way up into the flower. So again, I'm just trying to hit the edge of that. And then I'm going to give that a good spritz so that we get something quite nice and watery. I'm going to pop those there. Ooh, lovely. And let's go for an even more watery one as a secondary stamping. So I'm not inking again. I'm just going to take an even softer, more watery look for that one. Let's get a bit of foliage in the mix. And I'm going to go with maybe the peeled paint, and then add that spring green again, just on a couple of fronds. Frond is a good word, isn't it? And again, I'm going to make that quite nicely watery, I think. So I deliberately kept the foliage separate from the lavender stems on this stamp set, so that you can choose how tall you want your stems to be, whether you want them sort of zooming away and lovely and tall, or you want them bedded down into the foliage a little more. There we go. And I think that might want a little spritz of softening. So I'm going for quite a watercolory look on that, and I'm rather enjoying it. Again, might add just a little bit of spatter. So I'm keeping things quite soft and fluid on this. I'm going to soften that foliage with a bit of spatter, softening those flower heads. And again, I'm going to let that dry and come back. I'm thinking of some framing. I'm thinking of maybe a little bit of, doodling around the edge, maybe some ephemera stamping. Let's switch it up again, shall we? Or maybe I'll go for another lavender. Let's go for something a bit more purpley this time, shall we? Just going to wipe that down. You can see the backs of my stamps get in a lovely state. Cleaning them every once in a while is quite a good idea. That's shaded lilac ink. And I might, again, just give a little touch of something a bit darker towards the bottoms of those. I do quite like, when I'm painting lavender with watercolour, I do quite like just a hint of rust at the base of the flower head, which is something you very often see on lavender flowers. I'm tempted to go slightly more blue-green with the stems this time. So this is iced spruce, which is a very grey green, and into that I'll put a little bit of bundled sage. Let's see what we get. This is playtime. This really is playtime. I don't want to be too specific, too prescriptive. I'm going to, on the back of that stamping that I can see there, I'm just going to add a little touch of extra green. Again, I'm going to go quite watery, so I'm going to give those an... Oh, that was a big splodge of water. This is the secondary stamping. Let's take this up into the background. Oh, that's nice. So with that as a lovely softness at the back, I'm just going to catch this before it goes any further. So if a splodge has gone too far for you, you can always pull back with a little bit of paper towel blotching. But that's quite nice up at the back there. Come on, focus, camera. It doesn't know how to focus because the image is blurry. I'm going to go again. And this time in the foreground, I'm going to put a slightly more precise stamping. That's the aim. So that's the shaded lilac ink again. Using too many now. Bundled sage, I'm going to go for the stem. Going to go again for that little touch of rusty hinge right around the base of the flower head, because I quite like that. So I'm aiming the corner of my ink pad into there. Maybe a touch of the peeled paint, because I think that's going to be quite nice again. Again, the edge of this, aiming for the centre of that flower. And then the last thing I wanted was the chipped sapphire, which I've lost. Too many ink pads on the table now. I really wanted a little bit of dark right at the top. Let's put that shaded lilac back in. Oh, there it is. It's hiding. I see it. So a little bit of that chipped sapphire just to add some extra. A gentle spritz of water for this one. And I'm going to go right into the middle here with it. So a bit more definition on that stamping. And I like that. So for the foliage, I sort of want one up here. Which will that be? Well, again, I've created this stamp loosely enough. If you want to, you can even cut those stems apart if you just want to stamp with the single or you just want to stamp the double. I have made it quite straightforward to be able to do that. So I'm going to go for a nice watery one of these right here because it went off the side. Let's pop that in. That's nice. That's in the background in a rather lovely way. Grand. Let's put a little bit of foliage in, and I think I'm going to make it mostly bundled sage. Little touches of the iced spruce that we started with, and maybe a little bit of the peeled paint up the centres. And let's let this be quite soft. I'm just loving the difference between those sort of fairly bold blues and greens and these more muted vintage purples. I mean, lavender comes in all kinds of shades, from the blues to the purples to a much more pinky kind of a colour. Oh, that's pretty. So just a little bit of spatter to join what's already there. I think we'll go with a little bit of green on the mat here already. This is the trouble with zooming in, is that you lose some of what's happening further down the mat. There we go, a little very light bit of delicate spatter onto that one. That'll do nicely. Yeah, quite enjoying these as a gentle floral set of tags. Okay, we've got 3 more. So I've got 2 lavenders already. That's lavender done. I'm going to go 2 poppies, 2 coneflowers, 2 lavenders. I like things nice and orderly. Let's go cornflower since it's sitting here. Do I want the same flower head? Let's have you, because you're quite a fun flower head. Let's have this large one, and then I might go for one of the smaller ones in the background. So you. I am enjoying this pinky orange affair, but I think I'm going to go for something more down my colour tones. I might go so far as yellow. I am enjoying the rusty hinge at the heart of things, so I'm going to pop that in again. I do like dried marigold as a colour, so I might use that as a sort of basic around the petals. Use some spiced marmalade to heat some of that up. A little bit of wild honey. I do need a stem coming down the middle here, so since the aqua marker's lying here, I might use the brush end of that to just hit that stem with precision, and then a bit of peeled paint because I like the colour of peeled paint. I'm going back in with the rusty hinge into the middle, and then maybe a little bit of, this is Vintage Photo Oxide, around the bottom of that central area. Good. Let's get watery. Spritz. Good spritz of water on that. And pop that into there. See what we get. That's quite nice. There's a real sunflower look to that. So that blue-green is definitely the marker pen. Whereas, as I say, I'm quite a fan of peeled paint. So what I might do is, same as we did with the coneflower the last time, just with the water brush, just catch that stem with a touch of the peeled paints so that the colour shifts back to the one that I enjoy. Now I've got lots of water reactive ink already on these petals, so I don't need to add extra ink. I could just soften the edges of some of those petals as they're stamped to introduce extra colour. And because I've applied the colour to the stamp in varying degrees. There's spiced marmalade, there's wild honey, and there's dried marigold going on in there. I get automatically a range of oranges on my petals. Let's shift it up for this second one to maybe this long-stemmed one, and it's the real twisty gnarliness of these coneflowers that I really enjoy. So this one's got plenty of stem that I can hit with the peeled paint. I'm going to go again with dried marigold as my petal base all the way across. Make sure I catch all those petals. Going to come in with the rusty hinge for the center part. So again, I'm aiming the corner of the ink pad into the top part of that stamp. Going to hit some of these with some spiced marmalade because it's delicious. And again, a nice spritz of water. Ooh, let's have the vintage photo around the base, because I think that is a really lovely effect to just create some weight. I don't know how precisely I can achieve it, but we'll give it a go. And a spritz of water for the first stamping. Going to have him coming in from there, and then I might go for something a lot more watery. Get myself a secondary stamping. Let's pop that mask down if I can locate it. Is the other mask here? Yes, that's you, isn't it? So that way up. Let's just position. Oh, there's the stem. The stem's the thing to look for. Oh, it is that way around. I was looking at it thinking, that's surely reversed. So you need to have your mask the right way up for this to work. So placed over there. And then I'm going to have this one coming in from behind, nice and watery, so it will be in the background. That's a good layer. Quite like that. Sort of want another one popping over the top. Might use a bit of this green while it's here to just add colour. Going to use the water brush to soften these petals before I decide to stamp another, because maybe I don't want another. Maybe what I want at the top will be words or some more doodles, but I am enjoying that soft one in the background. It's very nice. Might just spritz a little of this green in a very loose way over this one. There we go. So you're just creating the impression of profusion. I don't have masks already cut for these two, but what I think I could do quite effectively, I'll let that dry, and then I'm going to come back and maybe look at stamping in between. Ooh, but while I've got this one on the thing, I could, so I have got a mask for this. You can tell I'm playing, can't you? You can tell I'm absolutely just getting ideas as I go and thinking, well, I've got this flower head on the grid block, so let's, while I've got it there, pop in a yellowy flower head using the mask for this flower. There's the central rusty hinge. There's the vintage photo around the base. There's the peeled paint heading up the stem. Let's have a nice little spritz of water. Get this mask basically in place. Again, I'm not terribly troubled if it's not completely precise. And I'm going to take a flower head through the middle there. Ooh, that's nice. I sort of want another one, even more watery. Maybe doing, oh, let's have you back. Maybe doing this through all this lovely spatter here. So again, just letting those flower heads build up to a lovely profusion. We'll take the water brush again, soften these. Since we've done that with these ones, these have got quite a bit of colour on their petals. So let's let these match up to that. And this is going to get some of that pink splatter back reactivated, but in rather an exciting way. I'm enjoying all these fiesta colours. This one's got a much more naturalistic look. This one's got a real fiesta sort of look. I think what I might just do in the background up here is give myself some blue sky splotches later on. Well, why not? Why not now? Stormy sky? Maybe tumbled glass would be better than stormy sky. Have I got tumbled glass out? Tumbled glass is a lovely pale summery blue. Ooh, that's Oxide. Well, why not? It's on the mat now. Let's do that. That's quite nice. I'm quite enjoying that in a way that means I want to add some over there as well. And maybe even to these other two. And then that tumbled glass is going to be the thing which will tie our tags together in the long run. There's a real... Can you see what I mean about the sort of carnival fiesta look to this tag? That's great fun. Grand. Okay, time for some poppies. Our final two tags. There they are. Let's put away that coneflower. And go for a bit of poppy stamping. And for these, so what we started out with, these were done purely with oxides. I've mostly used ink for these, but you can absolutely use ink or oxide or both. I think I might take this closed one to start us off. So that's this chap here. And let's see, let's go peeled paint up the stem, always fun. Let it kind of bleed into those top flower petals. I'm thinking corals and pinks, or I might, well, I've got lots and lots of purple poppies in the garden as well. Poppies come in so many colours. It's really kind of up to you what colour poppy you want to have. That was a bit of picked raspberry going in with that. And to counter the picked raspberry, I might add some rusty hinge. I've got no idea how this is going to look. I'm going to give it a good spritz of water. Going to let it be the lower down flower head. I'm enjoying that rainbow. So again, what I'm going to do is just fill in a bit of colour. Just pulling the colour from the stamping onto the petals. That's rather lovely how that green has spread out. And I'll take what comes. I'm not going to fret and fuss. I'm going to let that watercolour stamping just be what it is. This is the joy of water reactive inks, is letting them react with water. So that's softened some of those full-on kind of colour rainbows into rather a beautiful flower head down there, I think. And then if I want to add extra colour, I can of course put it direct onto the mat and pick it up like paint from a palette and just use that to add an additional sweep of colour wherever I happen to want it. That's the dried marigold. And I think what I'll do is bring in some wild honey to warm it up. Wild honey just has a magical glow. So we're just creating another kind of party tag here, I would say. With golden poppies. With just that hint of blush going on. That's rather nice. I like that. Let's, while it's here, use these to spatter a party a little further up the tag. Who knew you could spatter a party with such ease? Going to pick up some of these that are a bit strong and let them be a really subtle background. Wipe off the tag and come in with one of, I think maybe the other big flower head. I think I want both the large flower heads on this one. So here I've got the centre of the poppy visible, and I think I'm going to let that be rusty hinge, because rusty hinge is one of the colours that is now tying things together here. We'll take a little bit again of that vintage photo around the base of those stamens to give it a bit of weight. Going to need my peeled paint coming up again for that. And we haven't got anything yet on the actual petals, have we? That's spiced marmalade heading around there. And what I might do, ooh, this would be fun, maybe a bit of Stormy Sky Oxide, just for fun, just to see what happens. Not entirely convinced I've inked up the entire stamp, but let's hope for the best. Oh, look, so that wants to come in from there. I do want it fairly upright. Okay, so I'll bring the stem down by hand. There we are. Oh, that's pretty. So let's get our stem continued down behind here. Lift up, but trace the line down, and it's coming in a similar kind of direction there. And then I can pick up a bit of peeled paint with the water brush to just fill in and give that a bit of boldness through there. Nice. Okay, so again, I'm going to pull in some of the colour from the stamping first of all. Let that do a job. And then I might pop in some rusty hinge to the centre of this flower. Give it some depth down into here. This might end up being my favourite. There it is. Just shaping those petals. And then again with the wild honey to add an extra touch of warmth. Just in a couple of places. Bring those petals to life. That's pretty. Okay, and I've got stuff on the mat here that again I can choose to spatter. Got some greens, got some rusts. That's rather nice. I was just thinking something. Oh, I was thinking that while I've got the rusty hinge on the mat, I'm going to do a little bit of freehand painting to add a little bit of rusty hinge. Is that rusty hinge? Seems awfully orange. Maybe what I want, as well as the rusty hinge, is a bit of this vintage photo oxide. So I'll use that to just add that little bit of detailing at the foot of these lavender stems. So it might just be my lavender stems, I don't know. But I do find that you get this kind of rusty tone very often going on at the base of the stem. And it just provides that extra bit of variation that is rather fun to look at. Also, this one lost its stem, so while I've got these sort of soft greeny browns, I'm going to just draw a stem down through there quite impressionistically. This one lost a lot of detail, so I might choose to get out something like a blue pencil. Have I got a blue pencil? That's a bluish pencil. And just add back in a little bit of detail. That's a very blue pencil. I'm not sure I love that. I'm sure we can lift it up with some water. That's a much softer blue purple. That's a better kind of colour for lavender. There we go, going through there. And again, kitchen towel is your friend. If you feel like something's too much, a little bit of damp kitchen roll should be able to lift up some of that colour. Sometimes with a watercolour pencil you find that it suddenly activates it and you end up with a lot more colour than you had before. But very often you'll be able to lift up something that's bothering you. And or we might just stamp right across that particular flower head to distract us. Grand. So we're now on our second poppy tag, and I do want to have a little bit of purple going on, I think. So I'm going to take rusty hinge through the centre again, because I did enjoy that. Little bit of vintage photo, just the corner of it, again weighting that down. I think I want the shaded lilac for my poppy petals. We'll take peeled paint again up this stalk, but it was quite full on, the peeled paint last time, So what I might do is just temper it with a bit of the spring green. And as well as that shaded lilac, I might try for a bit of chipped sapphire detailing through there. Let's see what we get. This should be fun. Decent spritz of water. Going to come in from this side this time. Oh, I love that. I love that. So I'm going to add some more colour to that in various ways, starting again with pulling the colour in from here. Ooh, and look how that brown's just come up from there. That's magic. Hope I'm on camera for that. If it's spreading too far, arrest it. Just put a stop to it. I want to bring in some of that shaded lilac. Just maybe around the sides of here. And it's mixing with those colours as it goes down. There's a magic to that that is really making me happy. Grand. So which other poppy flower shall we go with at the top of here? Going to use a bit of that shaded lilac to spatter. Well, do you know, I might not want another flower head on that one. No, let's do it. Let's be bold. I'm going to go with, which one will it be? I think maybe that one. Coming in from the side. So let's have you can go away. Same sort of thing though. So shaded lilac for my flower petals. Pretty much all over that bit. Rusty Hinge going in for the centre. Again, aiming the corner of the ink pad. Let's take a little bit of the Vintage Photo Oxide down at the base there. Again, trying to hit those parts. With a little bit of that chipped sapphire just dotted around, and come up the stem with the peeled paint and a little bit of spring green. Let's just lose a couple of those splotches. Nice spritz of water. And let's have you coming in like so. Gorgeous, gorgeous colours. I've lost my Pentel brush. So this is the water brush, just drawing in some of that colour, softening some of those petals, creating that lovely watery look to our flowers. And again, I've still got the shaded lilac on the mat here, so I'll use that to give a bit more presence to just a couple of these petals. But I'm really enjoying the loose look of that. That's what I'm after today. It's that watercolory feeling. Take even a little bit of that shaded lilac down onto those stems. That's definitely looking like my favourite tag at the moment. Another little go with just a bit of delicate spatter around there. Good. Bit of delicate spatter through the centre here where I can see a gap. Just bringing in a bit of blue tone to that background on that very yellow tag. I think the blue just gives us a contrasting tone within it. Grand. This is the least watery. I'm thinking about being bold and just, yeah, going with a splat of water over that to see how it grows. Great. I'm going to leave these to dry and maybe come back to do just a little bit of word stamping. Back shortly. One of the exciting risks I took when I was making these was if things had got very, very watery and I wanted to recreate a bit of the detail here. So if you've stamped on a stamping platform, that's fine. And you'll be able to restamp and get all the detail you want. But one way of doing it, if you haven't done that, rather than inking up the whole stamp, which will risk really missing the point, I'm going to aim just for that central part with my Vintage Photo Oxide. And I'm going to use it, well, I might put in a bit of the Rusty Hinge as well, just for fun. I'm going to when I press, I'm only going to press with my finger right on that middle bit, and I'm going to do it having lined up the stamp to approximately, or as close as I can without indexing, and I'm just going to put that central bit down and get myself some of that detail back. It's a risk, because if you completely miss, then you might end up with nonsense. But you can be fairly precise with this, just with the outline of the stamp. I'm gonna risk it with this one as well. So again, aiming the corner of that ink pad to that part of the stamens that I want to give another little accent to. It's already quite okay on here. So I line up the stamped image with what I can see of what's there. I place my finger behind where I want to make that contact, and rather than pressing down the whole stamp, I'm just going to press in that central part, and you can see that I've got myself some lovely poppy stamen detail back on that stamp. I think most of the rest of these I'm pretty happy with. I might want just a little bit more. So it's again on that one where I've spritzed quite heavily. Going to take the rusty hinge this time, and again just aim it at that central part of the stamens. Maybe a little bit of the vintage photo as well, because it's just that little bit darker than the rusty hinge. And if you're going to do this, you might as well make it worth it. So again, I've got my finger lined up with behind those stamens. Going to line up what I can see of the stamp, so that stalk is useful. I can line up with the stalk, then looking at this petal, and then just pressing for that central part to get again just a little bit more going on in that detail. I could do a bit here. I might, well, that one might be nice to just revisit, except I do like the watery look of it. Should we have one go at that? See one go at getting my lavender detail back. The joy with the lavender is, because it's so loose, you can, doesn't even need to be that same stem, but it's pretty easy to see that that's that same stem. No idea what colours we used for this, actually. I'd have to go back and look, but what I might use is, I know I used shaded lilac there, so this must have been, was it Stormy Sky maybe? I've been clearing up my inks already. Okay, Stormy Sky onto this small lavender head. And again, I'm not going to really trouble too much about lining things up, because wherever I add that detail is going to be useful. There we go. So you see just those little sketchy outlines to bring a little bit more shape back to the flower. If you feel like you haven't got quite enough, I might go with a little bit of a... Ooh, see, Stormy Sky Oxide is such a pretty colour. Let's add that over and see what we get. Yeah, that gives us just a little bit of shaping and definition around there. Worth it if you want it. It's an idea. It's absolutely not compulsory. So in terms of framing and in terms of additional stamping to these, you could go with ephemera stamping. I think it's probably just a word or two. And what I do want are some doodled borders. So I think I'm going to go with quite a fine pen. Let's see what this is like and whether it's working. It's always the thing around here. Great. So let's start with the party one. And I'm just going to take a line up and down. So this is mimicking again my wonky sewing. If I were to do sewing, the sewing machine would break, because that's my history with sewing machines. If I were to keep it going for long enough, it would definitely be wonky sewing. So I'll just put in a few of those knots that inevitably happen when I sit down at a sewing machine, one on each side, just drawing the eye inward. And same on this one. Even though it's going to take me right through those petals, I'm fine with it. This is a loose, easy, fun thing to do with your floral stamps. Obviously any floral stamps, you don't have to be using my PaperArtsy stamps. Tim Holtz has amazing floral stamps, so many glorious floral stamps around the place. So take them out for a spin. I am just enjoying that one a lot. This is still quite wet. I thought I had planned to go in with a heat tool. Clearly I forgot, or I didn't aim well enough to hit that one. Let's go up and down, up and down, up and down. And you can see this really doesn't need to take time. It's a loose, simple way to add a little bit of hand doodle detail to whatever you've been making. And it's a brilliant way to draw the eye inward. That's what frames are intended for, have always been intended for. The frame shouldn't be the thing that takes your attention. Those gilded monstrosities are just about showing off. A frame should be doing the job of bringing your eye to the artwork in the centre. And these again are going to clip the edges of the lavender, but by doing that they're kind of saying, really pay attention to the lavender that's in the middle, would you? These side ones are just an extra part of the story. Come and have a look at the centre of this tag. And you can see I'm sort of putting one knot on each edge. Absolutely don't have to. Might be one knot where you've joined on and then taken your thread off again. What's it called? There's a word for it, isn't it? When you sew a seam or something. Fastening on? No. Signing on? No. It's a different thing. Oh, God, I used to know. Even though I didn't really do sewing, I have been known to put up my hems with double-sided sticky tape. That's a terrible thing to admit to, isn't it? Great. Let's have some simple words. Calm, healing, strength. Yes, I think a little bit of healing through this bottom corner might be nice. There's the healing. Simple stamping. Going to go in a fairly bold colour so that it'll catch against all this background stuff. So this is Night Sky. Nice strong word in that bottom corner. What do we want here? I really want celebrate on this one. One of my new sets has the word celebrate. Where is it? Carefree is good, but I want celebrate. There it is. I think it's that one. Yeah, grand. And let's have it in orange might be a bit much. I think I might go for green actually, just to give us a connection to those flower stems. Olive is probably the one that's going to be strong enough. Let's pop it in olive. Touch of leaf over the top of that, just to get a softer green. And I might even put a touch of this spring green, because that's been around. In fact, that looks quite good. I can really see the word. Let's see what we get. Either it works or it doesn't. I think it might go at the top. Good. Yes, I like that. Thing with oxides is they are opaque, so you get that presence of the word. Let's have a look. I think I want Imagine on this one, which is on this set. Imagine, where is it? Must be this one. There we are. And I think we'll stamp it in maybe weathered wood. I think might tone in quite well with the blues and greys that are going on here. Or maybe it wants a touch of the Stormy Sky Oxides. So that's now mixed together. Let's pop it there. Perfect. Perfect. Subtle little addition. So sometimes you want a word to be really, really present. Sometimes that's because it needs to be, because of what you're stamping it over. Sometimes it's because of how you want the tag to live in the imagination. Do you want it really full on? Sometimes you want a subtlety that just gives you gentleness. I think onto here we might want, I think these are going to be carefree. I think these might be strength, feels a bit strong. Sunshine, dancing. How about dancing? Just showing my age because a little bit of Leo Sayer just popped into my head with that word dancing. And I think to tie in with those nice little bits of rustiness, I think I'm quite inclined to let this one be rusty. Which side do I want it? I think I do want it that side. I'm being very bold with this. I haven't once double checked that I've got the word the right way up. Watch it be the wrong way up on one of these last ones. I think these might want to dance as well, actually, you know. Or carefree. Let's go carefree. There's carefree. But I am enjoying that rusty look. So I might let this one be rusty as well. But upwards. Let's mix it with another colour. So again, I'm going to lean this onto the bottom part of that word. So that's now got some rusty hinge and some of that vintage photo. That is the right way up. Just make sure. There we are. So you get a little bit of variation in the colour of your words. And then over here, quite inclined to go green again. Let's maybe have you. And go for, could be summer, sunshine. I think I want quite a calm word up there. Not calm, short word. I want a shortish word. We could celebrate again. Or maybe we go summer. Let's keep things simple. And I'm going to go green so that again it's tapping into those colours down there. So I'm going to put peeled paint onto it. And then again tap in some of this spring green across the word. And that's going to go there. Lovely. Very happy. There we go. I will, of course, dive in for a close-up so that you can have a look at what's going on in some of those lovely watercolour effects. But thank you so much for your company, as always, on this creative journey. Leave any comments, questions down below. If you've enjoyed this video, do give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't already subscribed to the Words and Pictures YouTube channel, I would love to have your further company on this creative journey. Happy summertime all, and happy crafting.